Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. There have been a number of queries on self-knowledge. So we will just study some very important aspects of self-knowledge. Everything has to do with sadhana when it comes to self-knowledge, because it is not a vritti gnan. You cannot know the self through modifications of the mind. You can only know it when the mind has become so stable and crystal clear that it shows you what is beyond it. Drishyate tvagraya buddhaya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhihi, it is said in the Upanishad, which means it is known only by the very clear, refined, transcendental intellect, by the power of its subtlety. And it can be known actually only by being it. It is being and becoming. It is unfoldment of the highest awareness. So there is no knowing it as you know an object. You can only be it actually. But there are a whole lot of, you can say, methods towards this, which we will be discussing briefly. As you know, how to know the knower, when you ask this question, the common suggestion of the Upanishad, this you find in the Kathopanishad, is the ability to generate what is called avritta chakshu, the inward turned eye and the inward turned mind. So the actual mantra goes like this: Paranchikhani vyatrinat swayambhu tasmat paran pashyati nantaratman kaschid dhira pratyagatmanam aikshat avritta chakshu amritatvamichan. One sees only the external because the senses are turned outward. You see, the mind also is turned outward. But there was some man of very stable intelligence who turned his entire equipment inward and discovered the immortal one, the self. So avritta chakshu actually means the inward turned eye, the ability of the eyes, the faculty of perception to turn inward. And this is required. In fact, finally you have to turn to the very source of your awareness. And that is the unfoldment of the highest consciousness. So it is actually speaking, it is an unfoldment of consciousness and a transcendence from the body-mind complex. And it can be achieved through Vedant. This is the glory of Vedant, that it brings you techniques and it brings you the praman, shabda aparoksh. These are also techniques which take you into this knowledge directly. But for that as a preliminary, let me tell you, you must use yoga. It is an infallible means to make your inquiry successful. What is yoga? It is basically stopping the thought modifications of your mind so that you are not carried away by your silly thoughts, so that they do not compromise, you do not compromise on self-knowledge. And yoga also involves working on Chidabhas, the reflected awareness in your mind. If that can be increased by the shutting out of thoughts, then it will lead directly to self-knowledge. It will make your inquiry successful. Recently, I was in the Himalayas. I spent some time there. And in that utter silence and stillness, I understood the sheer efficacy of all these processes. Because really, in a state of complete stillness and silence, if you ask the question, who is it who is watching this stillness? Who acknowledges the complete absence of the thought process? You will get an inkling of what you're searching for. So this is a possibility if you use inquiry as a sharp knife, as a weapon to get into self-knowledge, but stabilize that weapon through the medium of yoga, a very stable mind, a zero thought process, and it will work really like magic. So what are the common methods in which we enter self-knowledge? One is koham. Who am I? In a state of complete stillness, If you ask yourself, who is it who watched the thought process? And who is it who's watching this complete absence of thought? Again, you will come to self-knowledge. There are so many such methods. They are also called Atma Vichar. It is not exactly thinking about the Atman, but it is about inquiring into the source of something. If in complete silence you see that you are perceiving the silence and that you is definitely not this body and mind, then you are coming very close to the knowledge of the self. So there are very many such methods. See, the mind works through identification with the thought process. If you stop that identification, this very mind will become conscious to its very depths, and that will lead you to self-knowledge. Like this, you can discover your own method, your own particular method to take you into this knowledge. The common methods described by Vedanta, I think you're quite familiar with. We have been discussing for a long time. They are Drik, Drishya, Vivek, separating the seer from the seen. Ultimately separating awareness from everything else so that you know your real nature. Then there is the method of the Panchakosha Vichara to go into self-knowledge, discriminating between the 5 sheets with which ordinarily you are identified with, but you are not that, so you can separate yourself from that. And then you have the Avasthatraya Vichara of the famous Mandukya Upanishad, which will tell you that you are the invariable that runs along the 3 variable states of Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. So if you can catch that invariable through all the 3 variables, then you attain self-knowledge. So these are all methods. All that they require is the inward turned, very stable mind, which you can manufacture through yogic techniques. And finally, there is the Shabda Aparoksh. Vedanta Vakyas themselves, the Mahavakyas themselves, can usher you into the state of complete knowledge if the mind is ripe enough. And if it comes from an illumined Guru, the Mahavakyas themselves, there are 4 cryptic statements in the Upanishads. Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahman. Just these statements coming from an illumined mind and in a very ripe disciple will put him into the state of self-knowledge. So these are all the characteristic Vedantic methods for self-knowledge. Please remember this. The ordinary human mind functions like a lens. It will reflect light, which means information, data coming in. It will refract, it will deflect, it will diffract, it will polarize light. It will do all of this. But this very lens, if it is completely clean, it starts functioning like a mirror. It will give you a taste of your true being. It will turn inward completely. So this pure manufacturing, this pure lens of a mind, which functions like a mirror, is the whole point in sadhana. In fact, please watch this slide. Only clean the lens and the light will sparkle. This was Sri Ramakrishna's characteristic method towards self-knowledge. Once Narendranath, as a young disciple, was sitting in front of Sri Ramakrishna, and in the course of his conversation with him, Narendra suddenly said, "Well, you cannot know the self, tini avang manasa gochar, Brahma ke jana jayena." At once Sri Ramakrishna said, "No, it can be known." How? He said, by the pure mind. By the pure mind. The pure mind is equal to the pure buddhi, which is equal to the pure Atman. This mind, which is completely clean and polished, it starts functioning like a mirror. It will show you your own true being. And the clue to that is the pure aham pratyay, which is unidentified with anything. So you see, that is why it has been put there. Pure aham pratyay will reflect the pure self. So it is possible to go into this knowledge. That is why Sri Ramakrishna's formula, pure mind is equal to pure buddhi is equal to pure self, is very important for spiritual aspirants. And in the Vedant, the self is called Aham pratyaya saram or ekatma pratyaya saram. It is the very essence of the I thought. If the I remains unidentified with body-mind complex or with anything, for that matter, any of the faculties of the mind, if it remains unidentified, it will become deeply aware. And that awareness itself will crystallize into pure consciousness through inquiry, through meditation. So there is a way of knowing the knower. The difference between ordinary perception and self-knowledge has to be recognized. That is why, for all sadhaks, for those who are on the spiritual path, this difference is important. In ordinary perception, what is called parokshanubhuti, it is entirely vritti based. Please see the slide. It is entirely based on the modifications of your mind. The medium of perception is dense because the mind is cluttered. It requires proof, isn't it? And it is heavily mediated knowledge. So many factors are involved in the perceptive process. For the simple perception of, say, a chair, you see, the chair should throw out light. It should enter your eye. The eye should be in proper working order. It should go, the retina should be functioning well. The inverted image in the form of electromagnetic radiation should go to the visual cortex. There, the neurochemistry should be functioning properly. Finally, you get some sense of the object. It's mediated knowledge. So many factors are involved. But aparokshanubhuti, self-knowledge, please watch the points there. It is aham pratyaya based. The pure I, if scrutinized to its depths, will take you into self-knowledge. It is not vritti based. And the medium of perception is absolutely clear like a mirror, not like a lens. And it is self-evident, this knowledge. It is called Swayam Prakash. You do not require another proof. Do you require a torch to see the sun? Of course you don't. The sun lights the batteries of your torch. So it is self-evident and it is unmediated knowledge. You know it as a flash of insight. You don't have any mediating factor to transmit this knowledge to you. So please understand, self-knowledge is unique. Atma Vichar, that is why is not Manan. This inquiry path. It is not merely thinking again and again about something. It seeks to find the foundation of self-awareness by penetrating into the immediate and incontrovertible experience of oneself as the ego. Because we have this sense of ourselves as being the I, the ego, which we are not sure of what it means. So, through penetration into that, you can come to self-knowledge. And it is an intuitive process finally. It's an intuitive leap into reality and it leads to direct self-knowledge. So aparokshanubhuti is like this. It is not vritti based. And no method actually can, in a clear-cut way, although you see even Advait Vedanta has its methods, prakriyas, but ultimately it is an intuitive leap into reality. The mind should just be prepared for that. You must intensely want that. Vyakulata was the only condition. Restlessness to realize truth was the only condition which Sri Ramakrishna said would bring God realization to us. So it is important to know these points. Please see the nature of consciousness is put here. Both knowledge and love, the highest knowledge and love, are afterglows of a unitary experience of pure being. Swasamvedya Swayam Prakashatvat, it is called. It is the only experience that does not require proof. By its own effulgence, it is self-evident. The nature of consciousness is that the experience itself cannot be captured objectively, obviously. That's why Shankaracharya says, Jagrat Prapancha Mithya Drishyatvat Ghatavat. It's a mind-boggling statement in Shankara's Advait Vedanta, which means the world is unreal because it can be objectified and seen. Objectification leads to falsity of experience because it is heavily mediated knowledge. When you know the self, it is so obvious and complete and direct that then you understand everything else is indirect in comparison to that. So knowledge also is comparative. You see, you know something as it is only when you know something different from it. So aparokshanubhuti actually shows us the limitations of parokshanubhuti. The experiencer resolves into pure being during the experience. That is why the experience of samadhi is all absorbing. See, what we call nididhyasan also in Vedant, equivalent to nirvikalpa samadhi, it is when you stay with that thing, you're all absorbed in it. Reality captures your entire being because you have transcendent mind. The vagaries of the mind do not work there. So it is a state of pure being in which the mind is simply absorbed. And when the mind and prana move, then the world of objects takes shape. That is why, in comparison, when the person comes out of it, in comparison, he says that that was the state of the highest bliss. So this is the nature of self-knowledge. It ushers you into being and becoming. You become that verily. I remember Nisargadatta Maharaj used to very beautifully say that, you see, there is no path to this because what you are seeking is so close to you, there is no space for a path. You are the consciousness which is illumining thought for you to think about self-knowledge. How will you seek it through a path, through a method? It is so close to you, there's no place for a path. I also remember Rumi's beautiful observation on this, Jalaluddin Rumi. He used to say, I knocked and the door opened, and then I realized I am knocking from within. You are already the self that is seeking self-knowledge. See, this is the great irony of human life, the great enigma. You are already that which you are seeking. Just clear your mind, bring it to a level of perfection, and you will know the truth. So these are all very beautiful observations by illumined masters. Now I would like to conclude this presentation with a story from the Chandogya Upanishad. It is the story of Indra and Virochana, which gives us some very important points on self-knowledge. I will conclude with this story. It is said that once there was a Akashvani, a kind of cosmic announcement, a cosmic FM radio, you can say, which everyone hears, which said it was a Akashvani by Prajapati Brahma, the creator of the universe. And it said that the supreme knowledge of the Atman is the way to satisfy all desires and to attain immortality. Gaining this knowledge, one verily realizes the supreme, and hence this knowledge is to be aimed at. So when he made this pronouncement, everyone heard it. The demons heard it, the gods heard it, and the human beings heard it. So they decided to send their representatives to Prajapati Brahma's ashram to get self-knowledge, to learn of the Atman. Now, the Devas sent their representative Indra, the lord of the Devas, the king of the Devas, to Prajapati's ashram. The Asuras sent Virochana, who was their representative, their king, to the ashram. And these two came and met there, and they decided to lead a life of a brahmachari in the ashram and gain self-knowledge. So they stayed on in the ashram. Now, life in an ashram is not easy. You have to get up very early in the morning, practice meditation, and then a lot of scriptural study. Then you have to do a lot of work, the service activities of the ashram as worship. You have to collect firewood, draw water, serve the guru, serve him in his yajnas, bring firewood, cook for the inmates of the ashram. So they did all of this with deep sincerity. After some time, they found that their minds were calming down, more clear thought was there. So they were happy in the ashram. Suddenly, one day they realized that 32 years had sped by and they had not yet been instructed in the knowledge of the Atman for which they had come. So they went to Prajapati Brahma and said, Sir, please instruct us on the Atman. Now Brahmaji said, look, the light in your eyes is the Atman. Now think about this and see, the light in our eyes. What is that light? It is the light of awareness. So he is hinting at consciousness. But these two did not understand. And so then he said, okay, you bring a container of water. Place it here. They placed it. And he said, look at your reflection there. What did they see? They only saw their overgrown beard and hair and nails, because they had been leading an austere life in his ashram for 32 years. So he said, look, the reflection in the waters, that is the Atman. Now, Virochana was actually a demon. So he had a muddled brain. Muddled brain means more body consciousness, less awareness. So, wrong knowledge. So he concluded, oh, the reflection in the water is the Atman. That is reflection of my body. So my body is the Atman. Virochana concluded this and left the ashram and went back to his realm of the demons and told them, look man, don't worry about anything. What we thought, that is the fact. The body is the Atman. The body is the self. I am all just the body. And so indulge, be merry, do whatever you want to do. Don't bother about this self-knowledge and the knowledge of God and all this. And thus was born the race of Asuras, given only to body consciousness and sense pleasure, because they knew themselves to be only that much. But Indra, who was still in Prajapati's ashram, he pondered over this statement of the Guru. What did he mean when he said, the reflection is the Atman? The reflection is the reflection of my body, and my body itself is an object of my perception. So how can I be this reflection or this body? So then who am I? And then when he went to Prajapati and asked this, Brahma said, my son, very good, stay for another 32 years. So a long time passed again. He led an austere life. The mind became clearer and clearer, purer and purer. At the end of 32 years, again, he comes back to the Guru and says, please instruct me in the knowledge of the Atman. Then Prajapati says, my son, the being in your dreams, that is the Atman. Search for it there. Now, the being in my dreams, see, Indra thought, well, in the dreams, whatever I'm dreaming, I remember it in the waking state. Sometimes I forget, sometimes I remember, which means I am the witness of my dreams. So who's the being in my dreams? I have to explore this further. So he stayed on in Prajapati's ashram for another 32 years. So a total of 96 years have passed. And he tried to see all these subtle aspects of his own being. See, it's a most interesting research because it is researching into your own true being. And when he penetrated into this, he came to the knowledge of pure consciousness, pure awareness. And when he went to Prajapati next, Prajapati asked him to stay another 5 years so that his aspiration conflagrates and he is able to get the complete knowledge of the self. It is very beautifully described in the Kathopanishad. I'm borrowing it from the Kathopanishad. Na sandrishe tishtati rupamasya, na chakshusha pashyati kaschanainam, hrida manisha manasa bhiklupto, ya evam vidur amritaste bhavanti. The self is not an object of your perception, so you won't find it as an object. It has no form. Na chakshusha pashyati kaschanainam, you can't see it with these eyes, but one who clears the knots of his heart, to such a pure one, he awakens to the reality of his being. His awareness comes into complete fruition, into complete blossom. He realizes the Atman, pure consciousness. Such a one who has cut asunder the knots of his heart, he realizes the immortal one. So this is how Indra came to self-knowledge. When he had this knowledge, he just glowed all over, and his mind had become like that, like a crystal clear, sparkling gem. And the Guru at once realized that he had this knowledge. He had realized this. He had become one with it. And this is how they say the Devas acquired this knowledge. That is why they became the Devas, the gods, as against the demons who only stayed with body consciousness. So the whole point is this. One comes to this knowledge gradually as one purifies one's entire system. That is the whole point. And there is no shortcut to this knowledge. It cannot be quickly got. It has to be attained by being and becoming, by becoming one with it. This is the great secret of self-knowledge. It can only be known through sadhana. That is the royal road. One who penetrates into this knowledge through meditation and inquiry achieves it by the grace of God. Thank you very much.